Three, two, one. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Inside Movies Galore, where we are continuing to celebrate our 5 years of being here online. And this is, I would have to say, the third uh, uh, technically episode that Dustin is our good friend Dustin, which this is also his birthday. So happy birthday to you, man. Um,
Thanks.
and so why don't you tell us what movie you brought to us this week and had us watch?
Normally I prefer to do horror for my picks, but I figured we haven't covered this one, and it's kind of an important movie. So we are going with the Paul Verhoeven Robocop from, actually, was this from 87 or 89?
87.
87, so it's exactly as old as I am.
Same here. Me too.
What was the release date? Do we know?
Let me check. RoboCop. That was. I want to say it was a summer. It was definitely a summer. July 17th, 1987. So 2 months before I was born.
So, and I was November, so I hate being so bad at math. Like 5 months? Yeah, so RoboCop is actually older than me. Cool.
I was 3 years and a month old at that time.
Wow. But anyway, so RoboCop is one of those like great sci-fi films of the 80s, and it's really like important to a lot of people. So I wanted to try to put a lot of like production trivia and info into this, but I think I got a little overambitious, so I guess we'll just kind of get to the point. So, it's great. Because I stumble a little bit here. But in all seriousness, there's a lot of layers to RoboCop 2, aside from being, I mean, at its heart, it's basically a story about how a cop becomes a robot. But there's also a lot of political themes to it, and there's some pretty clever like satire, and there's really a lot to pick through. Like most Paul Verhoeven movies, like there's a lot of intention in the things that he shows you on the screen, and I figured it would be a good time for us to cover that. So, plus I had just recently picked up the really fancy Arrow 4K box for the first RoboCop, and I'd been really wanting an excuse to get into it. So, boy, there was a lot of stuff in there. So, with I guess that somewhat slapdash introduction, I'll just go into my first experience with RoboCop. So, growing up in like the early 90s, like very, very late 80s, sometimes toys would come with like little miniature catalogs for like other toys made by the same company. I think this was Kenner. Yeah, this was Kenner that did that. And I used to get Alien figures. And
I remember those.
Yeah, and you remember the little magazine that would come in some of like the bigger toys?
Yeah, they usually come with either the playsets of the vehicles or the deluxe figures.
Exactly. And so my first encounter with RoboCop was actually seeing RoboCop figures in one of those little like inserts. And I didn't know what RoboCop was, but it looked cool. And so I was aware of RoboCop, but somehow, like, this is kind of a crazy thing, actually. I don't think I actually saw RoboCop until 2016 or so. Like, I don't know how it managed to just completely drop off my radar after that, like, initial encounter. But, I finally was incentivized to see it. I was at Dollar Tree, of all places, like, flipping through the Blu-rays that they sometimes get, and RoboCop was there, director's cut, the old Blu-ray that was actually a pretty decent Blu-ray in terms of like the extras and commentaries and stuff you got on it. And I used to enjoy making after I'd seen it, I got to make the joke. I did buy that for $1 because I got RoboCop on Blu-ray for $1 from Dollar Tree, and so I always thought that was really funny. But I didn't really know what I was really in for when I first saw it, and it kind of blew me away. Like, it's like, wow, this is great. It's got like it's got high concepts. It's got like smart writing. Like, it's got great action. It's got an awful lot of blood and guts. Like, it's got kind of everything I enjoy in a movie, and so I'm really happy we get a chance to talk about it. So, who would like to go next? Dave? First impression?
Sure. I'll go next. I'm not exactly sure when I first saw RoboCop, but I know that it came out like when I was yay big. So it wasn't at least until I was 8 or 9 when I first saw it, like probably on TNT or something like that. And I didn't even know that there were sequels until I was a later teen. So eventually I did pick up the trilogy, and I also have the Steelbook and the Arrow release that came out of RoboCop, just because it is that good, of a film. I mean, to me, RoboCop was like, at the time, like an answer to like police issues at the time. Like, you wanted some justice super robot to come and clean up the bad stuff in town, So
funny thing is now is that RoboCop is kind of becoming a reality in some cities. Like, they have robotic police. They have robot police officers.
Indeed, and I guess you could say, in a sense, this is kind of like a Western science fiction film, because you've got him doing that old-fashioned, uh, gunslinging way that he flips his gun, like you'd flip a 6-shooter, So and I always thought that was a cool aspect of him, and I really enjoy the film. Thank you for bringing this to the table. I enjoy watching this every time I watch it. So. I think that's pretty much me. So what about you, Kroll?
Well, I watched it not in the theaters, but I definitely watched it right away. Probably I think I rented it. Pretty sure. And 2 and 3 when they came out as well. When I was a kid, I loved RoboCop. It was fun. Enjoyed going down memory lane. Now, I've had this discussion with Mo and a few others. I do like the reboot better. But that's just me. I mean, that doesn't mean I don't love the original still, which I do. I really like the look of the new one. Just hits my buttons, I guess. But yeah, it's a fun story, and yeah, and you can think of it as poor guy doesn't even get to call him dead. Dies, and he's still beholden to the police force and the company, and yeah, the company, the whole corporation, everyone there, they seem like the villains, the bad guys. I mean, not just that head guy, because of what they did to him, and it just, I don't know. Just they signed this paperwork, and I'm sure he probably didn't realize he was signing his fucking eternal life as well, So it's kind of fucked up, selling your soul to the devil. But yeah, it's a fun movie, fun franchise. So I've enjoyed it. That's about it for me. Also, I do like the gun twirling, and no, I don't think it's like a western at all, because I hate westerns. But that's not the point.
Okay, what about you, Forrest?
No, not a first time watch for me either. Yeah. So yeah, I was born just a couple months after this movie came out. But I guess my trajectory with it was kind of mirrors Dustin, in that I first discovered RoboCop through merchandising, action figures. I remember like seeing in a catalog they had like a RoboCop costume set for kids. And they had, and also pajama, like I remember like even seeing RoboCop pajamas, and then the video games and whatnot. Like, and also like, there was also, and I remember because I also remember there was also a TV show, a live action, a cartoon, both a live action TV show and a cartoon. Like RoboCop was marketed the hell out to kids in the 80s and 90s.
Oh yeah.
Which is pretty funny because it's a very hard R kind of movie.
Yeah, no, the
Yeah.
80s. We had this discussion when we talked about Aliens, about how there was this time in the 80s and 90s where you could market adult movies to kids, adult genre movies to kids, like RoboCop, The Toxic Avenger, Rambo, Police Academy, and like make cartoons, toys. Alien was another one too. Alien and Predator also. Very interesting time, and I'm glad I grew up in it. But I actually did not see. But I did not watch the movie itself until I was in high school. I just remember it being on cable. Just remember seeing it on cable, and I just stopped and watch it whenever it was on. And I did watch the sequels too. The second movie was just too, and for me, the second movie was just too mean spirited. The third movie was just watered down. Was just watered down ass.
It's pretty dark. Like, no kidding.
Yeah, and then I haven't gotten around to watching I never got around to watching the remake. But yeah, I have to agree. Yeah, but I would agree with Dustin on a lot of the points. Like, it combines a lot of things. It's an 80s action sci-fi flick, but there's a ton. There's a lot of great satire and social commentary that we would see Paul Verhoeven utilize in his other sci-fi action flicks like Total Recall, which I saw before RoboCop, and Starship Troopers.
One of the writers, one of the featurettes I did have time to watch on the box set, said that they used to describe this movie as fascism for liberals, and it's like, what does that really mean? That's kind of interesting. It's like taking some of those concepts and making them digestible.
Yeah. And I think I would say all the three of these movies, along with Basic Instinct, definitely made me a fan of Paul Verhoeven. I wish I know he's still making movies, but he tends to make like smaller movies now. I wish he was still doing stuff like this. And I also did have, but I do have a sizable amount of RoboCop merchandise. I'm actually wearing a RoboCop T-shirt right now. But I've got a few of the video games on Nintendo and Super Nintendo. I've got a few of the Nintendo and Super Nintendo games. I've got a bunch of the comic books written by Frank Miller, because who did write 2 and 3, but apparently the studio butchered his scripts, and for those ones. And and I have also got I have it on DVD, which I got the DVD as part of it was a 2-pack DVD with the first Terminator movie that I got from Costco, but I have seen it in theaters at least 3 times. The first time I saw it was with an audience, like it was sort of like a Mystery Science Theater 3000 style screen where people were yelling things at the screen and playing drinking games. Like every time someone said, "I'll buy that for $1," we took a drink. Also, I've seen it a couple more times in theaters since then. I actually went to a 35th anniversary screening of it, the uncut version, earlier this summer, which was a lot of fun, which was a lot of fun. But yeah, this is for me. This is just one of my. It's so much to like, about so much the dark, like the satirical humor, the blood and guts, the action, the score, like the special effects, the score. It's all really well done. And I would put, and if you ask me what my top like, I would definitely say put it among my top 5 movies from my birth year. Like that's how much I love RoboCop, or at least the first one, because I didn't care like that. At least the first one, because again, I didn't care for the sequel. I did not care for the sequels and the TV and or a lot of the RoboCop media that came after the first movie. But the first one I think is lightning in a bottle.
Okay.
Yeah, it's that's a pretty. I don't think I could have described it better. Really, like you nailed it there. So the sequels and spin-offs for RoboCop are kind of wild because, like, I personally like the second movie, but it is like a really you have to kind of be in the mood for it because it's a pretty hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, actually, if you actually so the second movie was written by Frank Miller, who did Sin City, The Dark Knight Returns. But he wrote the script for the second and third movies, but apparently Orion heavily doctored his scripts, and he wasn't too happy with the final products on either movie. But about several, about like 15, I think it was like 15, 16 years ago, Avatar Press put out a series of comic books based on his scripts for 2 and 3, which I recommend checking out.
I do remember there was RoboCop versus Terminator as a comic crossover that happened at one point too,
which Frank Miller also wrote, and I do have the Super Nintendo, and it's also spawned a really good video game for Super Nintendo, which I have.
Oh, there's a lot of stuff with RoboCop that I just didn't know existed, even though I've kind of tangentially heard of it, and so being reminded of it's like, oh yeah, I think I saw that on a shelf once.
Yep, and I have gone on. Yep. Oh, and I did finally dress up as RoboCop for Halloween like 3 years ago.
Rad. All right, Jake, I think you're up.
Sounds good. So RoboCop falls into an interesting category for me. I've got to agree with everything that you guys have been talking about how this film was very, very, very well known, well outside the circles that would actually watch it. And part of that was due to that wonderful trend of merchandising the shit out of stuff like this to kids.
Where the real money from the movie is made.
Exactly. And I believe I might have seen the animated series, or at least a little bit of it. I don't think I really got into it. I probably saw a little bit of it. I did not. I definitely saw the toys. They were everywhere. You could not escape them. The Halloween costumes, all that stuff, that was everywhere.
Cereal.
What's that?
The cereal.
I think there was one.
Yeah, there was a cereal.
I think I vaguely remember it.
I know in Japan they had a series. I know in Japan they had a series of commercials for a fried chicken restaurant with RoboCop.
Right. And of course, I'm looking at Paul Verhoeven's filmography, and I have to agree with Forrest. I probably saw Total Recall before RoboCop, and I didn't see that until college. That was in that weird little group. Still have not seen Starship Troopers, actually.
25th anniversary.
The only other Verhoeven films I've seen... The only other Verhoeven films I've seen at this point are Elle and Showgirls. And, it's interesting that Showgirls was not marketed the same way RoboCop was.
It's like, no, well, first of all, they didn't have. First of all, Elizabeth Berkley doesn't have 3 boobs, and and there's no cyborgs or aliens.
Well, it's proof positive, though, that in America you can get away with anything violence-wise, but put any sex or nudity in and...
No, it's horrible. It's the end of the world if you put anything sexual.
But
swearing and sexual is a no-no, but blow someone's head off? Go ahead, kids, watch it.
Yeah. Anyway, I could not swear to it when I finally saw this the first time. I feel like it probably was shortly after college. I honestly cannot recall if I saw it. I feel like, yeah, and of course, unfortunately, Brandon's not with us tonight. I feel like he either showed me this or the remake. I honestly have no memory of whether I've seen the remake, but I feel like at one point he felt like I needed to see the original trilogy. And I am almost sure that was my original, but I really couldn't swear to it because this one is so mixed up in the marketing of the time that I just couldn't tell you my initial. I have no idea. But I do know that when he showed me the trilogy, that was like when I started locking certain things into my brain. And then of course that scene, I'll buy that for $1, we now have on the opening of our show. So that is quite embedded in my brain there. I think I may have bought this for $1 twice, actually, because I picked up the trilogy in 2 different formats. I got one and then forgot I had it and got another one. And I got them from the library both times, so they were probably $1 pickups. They might have been $2, but it was close. And I have a really nice set. Unfortunately, it's a DVD, so I don't know if I'll ever upgrade because it just looks so nice. But I did watch the commentary with Verhoeven and Newmeyer, and was it John Davison, I think, was the producer. And yeah, Edward Newmeyer, the writer. Yeah, that was an interesting commentary and got a lot of good stuff on it. But the thing that it locked in my brain the first time I definitely watched this as part of the trilogy, and it locked in my brain this time, is that Kurtwood Smith is freaking awesome. And
yes, he is a great villain.
He has been one of my favorite actors ever since that 70s show. And he's had some great supporting roles over the years. Girl Interrupted, Dead Poet Society, all kinds of stuff. But in this one, I think this one ranks with Red Foreman as probably the most fun he's ever been in a role.
Mm-hmm.
He is a fun villain, and I really like the character. The rest of the movie, I like Lewis, I like Murphy. You know, the other villain is suitably an ass. You know,
which one?
Miguel Ferrer does his. Was that?
Wait, which other one? Dick Jones or
Dickie Boy, whatever his name is.
Ronnie Cox is excellent. Was excellent in this.
Yeah. And Miguel Ferrer does his usual Miguel Ferrer, which is he's a solid actor too. And I didn't even recognize him at first because he was so young.
Ray Wise too,
right.
Who's had a great, he's like who's always had a
great cast. It is a great cast, and it's a short movie that moves along at a good clip, and there's not a lot of not a huge amount of space to get bored or to what have you.
Yeah, everything is important in it.
Yep.
You're right. Well, and part of that was budgetary. They had to be conscious of that.
13.7 million. Although I think, I feel like for 80s, that's a big for the 80s, that was considered big budget.
Yeah, but for this kind of film, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's a heavy sci-fi, apparently inspired by Blade Runner, and so the expectation might have been for a higher budget, but yeah, overall, I'm glad I got an opportunity to revisit it. It gave me an excuse to get my set off the shelf. I'll try to watch the next 2 in the coming couple of weeks, hopefully get them knocked out too. I do remember vaguely that I didn't enjoy the sequels as much as the original, but I really have no strong memory of them.
Yeah,
But
there's nothing to cry home about.
but yeah, overall it was a good time. I'm glad I got a chance to, I guess, revisit it a couple times because of the commentary run through. So yeah, it was a good.
So you're gonna be a
Good.
teenager when you watch these movies, and then you enjoy all three movies.
What's that?
Gotta be a teenager when you watch these movies for the first time.
Yeah, I kind of skipped that part. This
I mean,
came
I-
out when I was.
I mean, I
this
was.
came out.
I
I was
watched
a
the
teen.
sequels as a teenager. I didn't like them back then either.
I was gonna say this
Well-
came out when I was 6, and
I
then
like-
I
I like
didn't
my
see it
gratuitous-
again until
gratuitous
after my
violence.
teens.
I like
But
my
yeah.
gratuitous violence, so.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Is that it then, Jake?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it'll never for me it'll never hold a candle to my top films from that year, which we've covered on this channel, The Princess Bride and Raising Arizona. But it's still a solid film, and I
Fucking
do
Princess
enjoy
Bride
it.
is the best movie ever. Well, not including Star Wars, but
How about you, Tammy?
Yeah, it wasn't my first time. I don't remember when I watched it the first time, but I do think I agree with everybody else. I think I saw Total Recall first because I remember seeing that actually in the theater. So, but
I'm the only one that saw Robocop first.
huh?
I said I think I'm the only one that saw Robocop first.
Seems like it. Actually, maybe
Yeah.
we should ask Dustin. Because Dustin, which did you see first, RoboCop or Total Recall?
I'm not actually sure. I think I saw RoboCop first. Because I picked up Total Recall when I was doing my like Dan O'Bannon collection thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would say RoboCop first.
All right, so that's that late. So okay, so I think it's 4-2 in favor of Total Recall.
But I do remember. I remember when it came out, and I remember there was a lot of hype and a lot of stuff. See, at 87, I was 15 at the time. So yeah, I remember all that stuff, all the hype, and I think all the guys went. I want to go see that, of course. But I didn't see it right away. I know that when it came out. But when I eventually did, I thought it was pretty cool. It was like a totally different concept, because you got the guy, he's part robot, part dude, So it was like a different concept at the time. Um,
And he destroyed the machine.
huh?
I said he destroyed the machine.
Oh, that was some of the best parts of it, but
I know. So I'm saying it was awesome.
it kind of I well, I know our police force and things like that have not been the greatest the last couple of years everywhere, but at the time, I think that at there was corruption all around too at that time. So it kind of shined a light, I think, on some of that. So and it was kind of true about people that had corporations basically run everything, which really hasn't changed that much, has it?
Nope.
But it was enjoyable. I mean, yeah, the criminal aspect were very very hardcore, nasty people. But yeah,
Can you
I thought it
fly?
was good. It did. I think it, like you guys said, it moved along pretty good. It had, you know, good good effects, good fun, some humor. So it was enjoyable. I don't really remember much about 2 or 3 or the newer one. I remember this one, so.
Okay. Why don't you, Dustin, bring us into the plot line then?
Okay, well, Robocop opens with just kind of showing off. The Robocop takes place in Detroit, and it's not necessarily clear whether or not this is like the future or not. Like we start with like a pan of like the cityscape, and then we go into a bunch of clips, like we're watching a TV in this universe, and those help establish the tone of just where we are and what kind of world this is. There are some news broadcasts, and they're all pretty bad. Wow. And there are commercials, which are almost as bad. Like, remember the Sports Heart?
Yamaha.
By Yamaha. It looks like a parrot.
The news broadcast, it's like, yeah, there's all this crime, there's crime, there's war, and they present it with a smile.
And it's like, yeah, extremists have seized a nuclear bomb. And it's like, oh, great. And we'll use it as a last line of defense. It's like, ugh.
What was the there was that song. I think the Don Henley song, wasn't it? Talking about a bull-headed blonde talking about tragedy with a gleam in her eye.
Mm-hmm. Plus, they don't give a date, but this is supposed to be set in the future.
Yeah,
kind of like how Alien doesn't really give you a time, but you know it's the future.
Incidentally, you're talking about the commercials. We got the one later on for the car with the SUX, was it 6,000 or whatever? Which I love that. Sucks. But then that commercial apparently was handled by Dave, by your boys the Chiodos.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, the Chiodo brothers had a little bit of hand in a little bit of everything. So.
And that stop motion dinosaur did look very familiar in that commercial. When you need bigger than big, the 6,000 sucks. 8.2 miles to the gallon, and it's like, Jesus.
That commercial was 8.2.
But anyway, those little clips like set the tone for, okay, we see what's going on here. And then I think that's when we cut to the board meeting talking about how the OCP Corporation has more or less bought the police department in Detroit and are cooking up ways to like reform it before they more or less rebuild the city too. They're showing off the plans for the Delta City project. And so we kind of right away get like a lot of commentary on like corporations having too much power over things that they shouldn't.
Privatization,
exactly.
And that, I think, is when we're introduced to Dick Jones, if I remember correctly.
And the old man.
Well, yeah, the old man.
We meet the OCP executives.
Yes.
And I guess there's a presentation of like this new police robot that
Ed 209.
Yeah, Dick Jones has designed the Ed 209 to more or less I need to stop saying more or less to replace the police officers. Because we need an officer who doesn't sleep or eat or rest, and it's like,
But the demonstration goes horribly wrong.
Yeah.
Yep. So, you could say that.
For the least.
Nonsense. It's just
the Ed 209 is a
Dick, I'm very disappointed.
Little thing with gun arms.
This is just a test.
You call it a glitch? You call this a glitch?
Yeah, so for those, well, first of all, if you haven't seen Robocop, why are you listening to us? Go watch Robocop.
Yes.
But as I'm sure you know, so this demonstration goes pretty poorly. So they hand somebody a gun and say, threaten Ed 209. to test Ed 209's like response to like threats. And the guy drops, and Ed 209 says with like animal snarls mixed in, drop your weapon, you have 20 seconds to comply. And the guy drops his gun, but Ed 209 doesn't register him as having dropped his gun. And for some reason, for this demonstration, they gave Ed 209 live rounds, and the guy gets blasted to shit.
He gets turned to kills and bits.
Well, it starts a kill count downwards too. Like you got 15 minutes to comply. You got 10 minutes or whatever, and then it just
minutes. You get seconds.
Seconds.
How can you strip that quote? It's so memorable. But anyway, so the guy's like, help me, and Ed 209 just perforates the hell out of him with the biggest squibs you've ever seen. And in the director's cut, this goes on for like 30 seconds. We just see him getting plastered by bullet rounds. And it kind of loses some impact in the theatrical version. When somebody, after they finally shut Ed 209 down and he stops firing, somebody get a goddamn paramedic. It's like, he's very dead. Like, he's unhelpably dead.
Right.
sounds
They talk about that in the commentary. They talk about how they originally had an aerial shot where you could see what happened, and they were forced to take that out. But they also had to cut down the length of it. And they talked about the impact of that statement, that it gets a big laugh in the director's cut and just a little chuckle in the theatrical cut because people don't really get it.
Exactly. But anyway, after the Ed 209 demonstration fails, I'm pretty sure it's Bob. I always get Bob's name wrong. Like, it's embarrassing.
Well, before this demonstration even goes on, there's another, I would say up and coming employee of OCD or OCP or whatever, and him and his fellow like coworker or team member are in the elevator, and he's talking about his project and whatnot. He sees the opportunity to state to the older board member about his project and that he's ready.
Yeah, they have a discussion where, I hear the Ed 209 is over budget. Like, if it doesn't work, there's a space for our project to come in and take its place. And after the demonstration fails, Bob and do we actually learn the other guy's name? Like his sidekick's name?
The other executive.
Yeah.
I know he's in all three movies. I believe his name is that actor's name.
It's
Felton Perry, but I don't think he ever has. I don't think they ever give him a name in any of them. Like, he's in all three movies. Oh no, Donald Johnson is. Okay, so in this movie he does not have a name. Well, actually no, he does have a name. Donald Johnson. That's his character's name is Donald Johnson. That's the other guy.
Don Johnson.
It's so embarrassing how I've seen these movies like 5 times, sometimes in a row, and I still don't remember everybody's name. Drives me insane. But anyway, so Donald and Bob are talking about their Robocop project, and then when the demonstration fails, Dick Jones is trying to smooth it over with the president of the company. It's like, this is going to cost us $1 billion in setbacks alone, and Bob swoops in. It's like, our project might be the answer to this. It's like,
it's like, here's this guy who's just got. I mean, they just got this guy who's just been shot to a bloody pulp in the boardroom. Meanwhile, he's making a sales pitch right there.
Which is kind of cold-blooded, eh?
Yeah, that's dark. That's dark.
Life in the big city.
Timing, you gotta seize the opportunity.
Yep.
Well, she actually said that, around.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, but ultimately he is kind of a dick about it to Dick Jones.
Oh, he's a complete dick about it.
And I have to mention that Bob, that guy, he's in my favorite Stephen King miniseries, The Stand, as
Oh,
like his
really?
number one. So, but yeah, very young in here.
Yeah, but anyway, so the president approves them to move forward with their Robocop project, and so that scene ends with Bob just going, "It's like we just need somebody to we just need some poor schmuck to volunteer," and then we cut to the precinct and we're introduced to Murphy, who will eventually become Robocop, as he's welcomed into what looks like a very dysfunctional police precinct. Like they're clearly like
Hell.
overwhelmed and overworked.
As they tell him, welcome to hell.
Yep.
Exactly.
Welcome to hell. Where you from? Oh, welcome to hell.
I'm from the South Precinct. Oh, that's a nice place. Welcome to
It
hell.
sounds like he was in like a Beverly Hills type, you know,
Or the
easy
suburbs,
area,
probably.
and he got transferred.
Yeah.
The hell did he do to get transferred? Shit.
Well, and as he like heads to the locker room, I guess that's when like the police sergeant comes in, takes the nameplate off the thing, and
Walker.
yeah.
Yeah, there was during the initial montage, there was a news story about 3 police officers killed by who will eventually be our kind of primary villain. So Horace Bedecker, right?
Clarence Boddicker.
Clarence Boddicker. Okay, I had the sound of the name right. Oh man, what a terrible day I'm having. Good lord. And anyway, there's a news story where he is implicated in the murder of 30-some police officers. So at this point in the station scene, like the sergeant is cleaning out the locker of one of the officers who died in that news story. So there's those news snippets. Some people are like, "What's the point of this? Like, what are the ads?" Like, well, they tie into everything.
Well,
You gotta pay attention to him.
And the police are always the police in the in that district are always on the verge of a riot, or not a riot, but a strike. At least during the entire film, I guess.
Yeah, the police have been threatening to strike just due to like overwork and poor treatment and just all kinds of stuff.
OCP. Oh, because OCP.
OCP is in charge of them now, and OCP does not run them very well at all.
They don't give a flying fuck about them. They treat them like stormtroopers.
Yeah, they see them as pretty much as their products. Like they have no regard for the people, which is kind of another one of the themes of this movie. It's like they even say a couple times to RoboCop, "You're our product. Did you think you were a real police officer?" So anyway, we're introduced to Murphy. We're introduced to his partner, and Officer Lewis is his partner, right?
Yeah,
correct.
I like her.
Yeah.
We get introduced with her kicking the shit out of a perp.
Yeah, there's a fight in like the bullpen, and she like beats the guy up. That was a good intro for her to show that she's
Verhoeven specifically wanted her to be introduced in a gender neutral way, one that even kind of hinted that she might not be a female, but yeah,
or wasn't originally intended to be female.
Yeah, what's that?
I said, or maybe it wasn't originally intended to be female.
I haven't read anything that made me wonder if he intended her to be female, but he did not. He wanted her to come across as someone that wasn't. Yeah. He didn't want her too feminine. Yeah. And there's also the scene that comes up in the locker room where you see them just panning over, all the people changing. It's very brief pan, and they kind of mentioned the commentary. We wish it had gone longer. Which apparently,
you get to see a little bit of boobs, but Yeah.
I was just say both this movie and Starship Troopers, like you see
Yeah.
cops and soldiers of both
Yeah.
sexes changing and showering together.
He
Yeah.
said he regretted that this scene was so brief, so he made a point in Starship Troopers to let it go longer.
Yep.
Yay for,
Just drag it out.
yeah, we're gonna have a longer nudity scene. Come on.
So we get a couple of exposition like character moments between them. So Murphy shows off his little gun trick, which is that's a kind of a cool character touch for RoboCop to have, like how he twirls his gun after he fires it.
Yeah, and he mentions that
Press the sun.
yeah,
It's kind of a cute story too, like his explanation for it.
TJ Laser.
everyone needs a hero.
And you kind of dig it too, don't you? Yeah, I kind of like it.
Yeah, how he does it based off of basically like this Power Rangers style show that his son watches, where the main character does the gun twirl, and so he learned to do it like as a thing for his son, and that was kind of nice.
TJ Laser, which is basically the futuristic TJ Hooker.
Right. I caught that myself.
I felt that sounded familiar.
I think TJ Hook was out at the time too.
Yeah, it was. It was.
TV show then, so yeah. My mom loved that show.
So anyway, they're called to respond to what I think it was a bank robbery. Because we cut right away to Clarence and his goons like in a truck, like going through like stolen money, and it's all been there's that great line. It's like, "You burned the fucking money! I don't believe it. I had to blow the door." So apparently they just robbed this bank for nothing because the money got marked in the explosion that they used to open the safe. And that's when Murphy and his partner show up, and we get a pretty cool shootout scene with them and the goons in the van. So
I love how when they pull up, they're like, we're at the scene of the crime. How long for backup? There is no backup going to be sent yet. And he says, "It's okay. It's your call."
yeah, Murphy does kind of a cool. They do kind of a cool thing here, where the thugs know that they're behind the van, so they all point their guns at the door and get ready to like kick the door open and open fire on the cop car.
Where'd they go?
And Murphy realizes they're going to do that and like pulls up next to them. So when they get the door open and start shooting, they're just shooting at nothing. Like it kind of shows that Murphy is a bit smarter than you would expect him to be. Like he's a he's a competent guy.
And they're dumbass criminals.
Well, except for Boddicker.
Dumb,
Well, he wasn't.
but
super
they
bright.
rely on Boddicker as like leader.
Yeah.
He's no Lex Luthor.
Well, he apparently got the part in part because Verhoeven thought with those glasses he looked a little bit like Heinrich Himmler. And that so he is kind of playing that part of like the evil villain who actually is considered a little bit competent there. Whereas the other guy, Dickie Boy, is just he's just a dick. He's just that kind of villain.
He fits his name.
He's not a mastermind.
Most dicks do.
Right. But yeah, Boddicker's crew, they're not the brightest, but they're not really dumb either. They're especially the Ray Wise's character. Which one's he? Lou or whatever it is? He seems a little sharper than the others.
No, the hard part about like a lot of henchmen in movies is you hear their names spoken maybe once or twice, like really briefly, really quickly when other stuff is going on. And so it's like, okay, it's scan the credits and you know.
Yeah, I don't know who's who. The only names I remembered is Murphy.
Well, Emil was one I picked up pretty easily, and I guess Leon, but a couple of the others I didn't quite catch. But yeah.
Not good with names. Celebrity names usually, but yeah.
Anyway, so after kind of that action sequence, but I mean, during that we do get like the really memorable moment where the guy who messed up the heist gets hit by a round in his leg, gets hit in the leg by a round, and like he's like, "Clarence, help me!" And it's just like, "Can you fly,
Can you
Bobby?"
fly? That is the best line.
With a cop car as a distraction. It's very ruthless. It's kind of like, oh, these guys will do that to each other. Damn.
Well, he did blow up the money and then got himself shot. So
It's probably would have shot him himself at some point. Yeah,
probably saved him the trouble.
Anyway, they eventually do find the hideout, and so they try to take down the gang like by themselves, and Anne gets knocked out pretty quickly during that kind of ridiculous scene. Anybody else want to talk about that?
Yeah, I know. I mean, he's like, she has to look at his penis,
I put this up, and she like glances down to like make sure he's like not making it up, and he just like punches her over a railing.
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, at first it looked like she wasn't even gonna bother, and then she does, and it's like, oh, come on, like she can't be trained enough not to look to see if his penis is there, And then you see him does zipper himself up, so obviously he wasn't lying. I mean, I don't know how much she saw of it, but it was just obviously a tactic, and she should have. I don't think she should have fell for it.
He did move fast, though. I'll say that.
What?
He did move fast, though.
Pretty quick, yeah.
Oh yeah, I agree.
I'm just saying, I probably would have fallen for it too.
I don't think she should have fallen.
It's
for
not
it.
like she was. It's not like her eyes were glued or anything. It was.
I think
more
she
like
was smarter than that.
Yeah. He distracted her
for like a second, and that was enough.
Yeah,
He was just like, wow, So it's I think we can give her a pass on that.
I think she's smarter than that. I
No,
don't think they wrote her right.
Well, anyway, so Murphy tries to arrest. What was it? Was that Nash? Or no, that was Ray Wise, wasn't it?
The guy who smokes and says you want to live on forever.
Yeah, so Murphy tries to arrest Emil, and dead or alive, you're coming with me. And then he gets ambushed surprised by the rest of the gang, and they take Murphy's gun, and they mess with him for a while before they start like just blowing him to hell. And that is a really graphic scene. Like people do not handle it.
Shoot his hand off.
Yep.
The other great line: "Can someone give this guy a hand?"
I know, but before that, he says to him, "I don't like cops, and cops don't like me." He starts doing that thing with the, his gut, pointing his gun up and down.
Yeah.
That was weird. Yeah.
That was brutal. It was brutal.
It was great.
It's kind of funny. Way before I saw Robocop, there was a throwaway Family Guy joke. Somebody's like getting shot or whatever. And the cutaway was like, well, you're doing better than Murphy from the opening of Robocop. And then it just pans away to Murphy like, and getting like all his limbs shot off by guys with shotguns. And it's like, does that happen in Robocop? And then many years later, I saw it. I was like, damn, they weren't kidding.
I recognized another moment that Family Guy did as a callback, but now I can't remember what it was. I have a feeling there's at least 5 in here.
This is a really quotable movie, and there's a lot of things that like carry over into popular culture. So I would not really be surprised in the slightest if there was more stuff that we missed, But anyway, I do remember in one of the discussions I saw that the reason they had that scene be so graphic was they wanted to emphasize he is dead. Like, dead. Like, they didn't, like, save his life by turning him into a robot. He was dead. They wanted to emphasize that, especially with, like, the last shot, like, to his face.
I think they did.
Like, chunks come out the back, and it's like, oof, yeah, he's gone. Anybody have anything else to say on that whole sequence?
I do want to say that one of the henchmen, the one that he tried to arrest first, he later played on ER, and I kind of wondered to myself, gosh, did that guy ever really have hair? But he played one of the main like head surgeons on ER for like the longest time. So
I do remember, when after they blew him
He did.
away and everything, and they took him to the hospital. He's having all this. He's remembering everything in his life. So we know he wasn't quite dead yet because he's, you're seeing all his memories.
yeah, you kind of have like a POV from his point of view while he's being taken to the hospital, while he's being transformed into what he becomes, and
Yeah.
it's
He's
interesting.
like dying. He's like dying on the gurney, and we're seeing like scenes from his life. And like I think he does undergo brain death, but something isn't really all that gone because he does eventually get his memories back. But after that sequence, we get, I think, what might be my favorite like little montage of shots where like his vision goes dark and then it comes back, but with like a VCR, like VHS kind of overlay for like the cameras of the time. And it's from his perspective, like sitting in like a workbench in the lab where they're turning him into Robocop. And it's like he flickers in and out of consciousness over what seems like a fairly long period of time. Like there's one where it's like, it's like we were able to save his arm. It's like, no, I thought we agreed on just full prosthesis.
Yeah, that's just cold.
Like,
he signed the release. He belongs. We can do what we want.
well, he's legally dead. He signed the release. Technically, we can do anything we want with him. Lose the arm. It's like, okay. And then they have like a demonstration of the arm. And it's, wow, it's quite a grip.
Well, then they show him
Could break
at the
every bone in
party,
your
and
body.
that
Lose
chick
the
comes
arm.
up and gives him a kiss right on his,
visor.
visor or whatever, and they're all acting stupid, and he can see this.
Yeah, that's a fun moment. Well, before that gets started, there's kind of one of my other like favorite moments in here too. Like Bob is like talking to the scientists about, it's like, okay, well, what can you do? It's like, how long is this going to take? Like, what are you're just kind of getting like the facts. And after he has his hand kind of scrunched by like the grip of the robot arm, he's just kind of like, he just kind of gets in his face and like points to Robocop. You were gonna be a bad motherfucker, and he's just like so excited about it. and like, I just kind of like that because even though he's like not necessarily a good guy, like he's kind of a fun character. Like Bob, like he really believes in this project.
It's interesting. They kind of have different.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jake.
They kind of have different levels of villainy here. Like Miguel Ferrer's character, he's a corporate scumbag. It's clear that he is pretty amoral with the way he looks at this guy as just a product that will make him rich. But yeah, again, he's likable enough, and really his villainy just comes down to corporate greed. And then you get like this plotting schemer who's a career criminal, who's technically not the big bad, but he's certainly the guy that seems to be the big bad. And then you got the guy who's actually kind of paying the bills, you might say, who combines both the amoral corporate greed with the actual villainy. It's kind of fun that they have they're working in different levels on this one. And that they flesh all three of them out in an hour-and-a-half movie.
Yeah, I mean, even though you don't get a lot of time with some of these characters, you get a good sense of exactly who you are. It's like, yes, this guy's like a corporate climber and he's greedy, but he's not like malicious per se. You know, I don't know. It's kind of hard to put words to, I guess. But I like his character. Anyway, so we get that line, and then we get Robocop comes online during their New Year's Eve party, the lab's New Year's Eve party. They get all excited. It's like, hey, he's awake, yeah. And what I assume is the lead scientist, like she has like a crown on, and she's like, hey, and she like puts the crown on Robocop and takes her glasses off and gives him a kiss, and she's clearly like wasted because she like slips and falls too. Yep. But it just kind of shows a little bit of like life, in this world, aside from just like to the point moments, like it kind of fleshes out the team like behind, that made him into RoboCop.
Yeah, I think she has kind of a geek crush on him while she's building him.
Well, I mean, you take pride in your work, especially if you're like an engineer or whatever she probably was. But the last of those ends with like he's clearly got plastic over his head, and this is like the big unveiling, and we don't get to see him for until a few minutes after this. So we get to just have him like walk and walk down the hallway in the lab, and everybody's like flanking him, like clapping. It's like, yes, we did it. And then you finally get to see him in the station. So how do we feel about that moment? Like his design, like his introduction. Anybody got anything?
Well, I think he definitely scares like a lot of the police officers once he starts walking through.
Yep.
He's a big dude. He's intimidating.
Like they don't know what the fuck to think about him at first, because well, number one,
Titanium,
he's supposed to replace them one day, so they definitely are uncertain around him, to be sure, and then of course I think isn't it like right away he goes to the is it he goes to the gun range first, or
gun range?
Okay. Yeah, I think he does the gun range first. Yeah, they do give a rundown of like his kind of charging station area. Like he does still need food. Like he needs like this really disgusting looking like paste.
Baby food.
They call it baby food, I think.
Like, and it looks like,
But then that guy started eating it.
It's good.
It's like, it tastes like baby food. And he's like excited. And
Yeah.
Like, I'll pass.
I'm sure they probably didn't really need it. That was just their kind of, well, he can get by on it,
Yeah.
Well, they said he needed it for the organic part of it.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They probably figured since he's a machine, they could just give him the paste and they didn't need to bother with real food. I kind of doubt that he needed it, but yeah, that it was really kind of amusing that one guy was taken into it so much.
Yeah, he was like the comic relief to Bob and his team, just a little bit there.
Yeah, but anyway, so then we get Robocop at the gun range, and Robocop has like a custom pistol. It's like a semi-auto thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of funny, actually. I hadn't seen Robocop back when I was playing this game, but I figured it out now. There was a game called Far Cry Blood Dragon where the basic pistol was the Robocop pistol, and in the description it was like the weapon of choice for cops of the future. And I was like, huh. that seems really specific. And then I saw like the gun in RoboCop.
Right.
It's like, oh, I'm dumb. Okay, I should have figured that out.
Yeah, the gun is actually
weird.
something
It's
that's pretty wicked. It definitely busts off a few rounds, like each time you squeeze the trigger. You know.
It's like a 3-round burst Desert Eagle looking kind of thing. It's crazy. And like they reveal it at the gun range when like all the cops are just shooting their regular like standard issue pistols, and suddenly there's like a really loud like burst fire weapon, and everybody kind of stops to see like what the hell is that? And RoboCop is just trashing targets with it. It's like cutting their heads off and shit with it, and it's like, wow. So it's the first like taste of like what RoboCop can actually do, and it's pretty cool. So, but more importantly, when RoboCop goes to holster his pistol, like he does the twirl that Murphy used to do, and that's when Anne recognizes. It's like, wait a minute, is that?
Yep.
And so it's a really cool thing. Like some muscle memory is retained, you know.
Oh yeah, I think it definitely becomes like a detriment to his character too. You know, as RoboCop, it's unique to his design as a robot.
I wouldn't say detriment. Like if anything, it makes him look cooler.
Right.
So it's just like an extra human touch. That kind of makes some people who see it like pause and go, "It's like, why would he do that?" So that seems to be kind of a theme with how they programmed RoboCop, because like he's supposed to be a machine, but because he was built from a human, like he still has some human mannerisms. And there's a couple of like little moments here or there where it's like, is he supposed to be able to do that? No, he can't do that. It's like, well, he's doing it. And it's like,
Well, yeah, they were supposed to like erase his memory entirely somehow, and I don't think they entirely did that or whatnot, because his memories definitely surfaced like through the film, you know.
Exactly, and that was something that was discussed in one of the extra features about how the film was about him losing his humanity and then regaining some of it back, but not becoming human again, like becoming something new, was the way they described it. And I think that's it's a pretty perfect description of what happens, really. So eventually his memories do start coming back, and he kind of grapples with it. So, okay, what have I lost? Like, but what have I gained? Kind of thing. But we're getting kind of ahead of ourselves. So after that scene, RoboCop goes out and actually, does some police work. And that is one hell of a fun montage. Like, we see him stop a store robbery. We see him stop, like, an assault.
Yeah, Bob's like,
Hey,
get in the
Breaks
car.
up a hostage situation.
He just punches through the wall like fucking Batman in Dark Knight Returns.
Throws the guy out the window. Throws the deputy mayor out the window.
He doesn't throw him, he punches him, and the guy flies out the window. It's even better. It's so nuts. Oh my god! Like, anybody, talk about that. Talk about like what you felt during that like montage of like seeing RoboCop in action. Like, I'm sure you guys have stuff to say on that, right?
Well, I definitely thought it was a fun moment that Bob was like, well, let's get this guy a car. And he goes to the chief and like, give this guy a car. And he throws the keys up in the air, and he's like, thank you. And then he goes in the car and, drives off. And right away, like he catches something. And then
Kelly, that was a very hard scene to shoot. Him catching the keys. Very hard scene.
Probably can't see too great in that helmet, honestly.
Thank you. It was so cool the way he did it too. He just like caught it out of thin air. He didn't even look. He just caught it. Thank you. He just didn't even lose his stride.
But I guess it's after that store robbery scene is where you actually see is he like he was said the montage where it looks like he's actually talking to children, like he's like a superhero of some sort, isn't it?
I think that's at the end of I think that's at the end of the montage.
Okay.
Yeah. The reporter says that he is what he goes because he goes to give a demonstration at an elementary school.
Yeah.
And the reporter says that he is what the students' parents saw in comic books growing up.
Do you have a message for all the kids out there? Stay out of trouble. Damn. It's pretty threatening, honestly. It rules though. I mean, I feel like we are kind of missing some of like the best RoboCop moments though. During that montage though. Like the guy grabs the girl and it's like, "I'll kill her, man."
Oh yeah, and he shoots the guy's nuts off.
Yeah, that is great. Through her dress.
Yeah, he like uses his targeting computer to figure out like where she is under the dress and like shoot the guy through her dress
in the crotch.
And she's still looking down like, what? Wait, what the hell just happened?
Yeah, she's looking down at her dress like, what?
Mm-hmm. And then the hostage situation with like the guy who lost the election to become mayor again. It's like, tell him I want my old job back. I want a new election. I don't want a car
with really fast
mileage.
And the negotiator's like, how about the model whatever? And it's like
Model SUX. It was the SUX.
It was the SUX. How about the Model SUX? It's like, does it come with cruise control? It has to have cruise control. It's like, sure, whatever you want, man.
Keep him talking.
And Robocop just punches through the wall and like pulls him into the other room. Like that's so I used to watch the Batman animated series, and there was one episode where they did a really brief homage to Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns.
I remember that episode.
Yeah, you remember that episode where like the thugs are like, "Where's the bat?" and just hands like smash through the wall and pull it through it. Like that's what RoboCop does in this scene.
Funny you should bring that up because like about 15 years after that episode aired, they did a feature. They did that feature-length Dark Knight Returns adaptation with Peter Weller, aka RoboCop himself, Peter Weller as the voice of Batman.
Oh, that rules! I thought his voice sounded so familiar. So that's a great adaptation.
I don't think I've seen that one yet.
I love it. It's so good. I mean, it changes a couple things here and there, but I think it's mostly acceptable. Like it's a great adaptation of that comic. Even though we don't quite get that, where's the bat? Hands through wall, pulled into darkness, like exact beat for beat moment, but the rest of it is still so good. Like holy crap!
Actually, both versions had their Paul Verhoeven connections because the feature length Dark Knight Returns had Peter Weller as Batman, whereas that segment from the animated series had Michael Ironside from Total Recall and Starship Troopers as Batman.
Rules! Oh, so good.
So yeah, if you want to do the Dark Knight Returns, you got to get someone from a Paul Verhoeven movie to do the voice. That's the lesson. That's lesson learned.
No, especially with his experience with themes of like fascism and dystopia. Like it's perfect. It's so perfect. But anyway, so we get the scene with the kids, and then I can't quite recall exactly what the next scene is. Like, I think is that when we get the gas station scene with Emil?
I believe so. He books it. Yeah. Emil holds up goes to fuel up his motorcycle and holds up
he doesn't. He has a dream or a nightmare, and he starts from it, runs.
Yes,
and wanders off. That's right. Yeah, so
and Lewis stops it. Lewis stops him because he recognized him earlier in the shooting range.
Murphy, that's your name. That's you. And then Robocop just wanders off, and they're like, "What did you say to him?"
Yeah, because
I think that's when he starts to remember certain things.
You remember who he was.
He has a nightmare about getting shot, and it's almost a funny scene because he's like thrashing back and forth in like the recharge chair, and there are monitors showing like his thoughts, like showing like Clarence and the guy shooting at him. And the technician who's supposed to be monitoring this is just like kicked back, just like reading a book. They're not paying attention.
Yeah, not at all.
No, and I think he goes off to like a supercomputer that's like within the police thing, and he's going through like all these different faces until he finds.
I think that happens after he runs into Emil.
Yeah. He ends up actually
he kind of randomly encounters Emil while he's
that's
rolling
right.
Leaves.
It just so happens
Emil's trying to rob that gas station.
Yeah.
And just kind of being a dick about it. Like he didn't have to go that hard, like taunting the guy. It's like, college boy, huh? You think you're smart? Think you can outsmart a bullet? Huh? And then Robocop shows up and says what he said to Emil before, dead or alive, you're coming with me. And Emil recognizes him. Like, killed you! And it actually freezes Robocop in his tracks as like he has a flashback. And Emil blows up the gas station, but that doesn't stop Robocop.
Just walks right through the fire.
Exactly. So, like, this movie moves along at a pretty, like we said earlier, this moves along at a pretty quick pace. I think we've got 40 minutes of it left, I think, at this point.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he books a meal. And he uses the data from his arrest to track down the rest of Boddicker and the rest of his gang.
But first, he takes a stop by his old place of residence.
Yeah, they said that they were going for like a Paradise Lost kind of feel with that scene, and I think they pulled it off because he's just wandering. He's wandering around his old house, which is now like abandoned. There's a couple of things left behind. And on the market, there's like an annoying little like video salesman. It's like, welcome. Would you like to take a tour? Because a lot of the subtext of this movie is like railing against like consumerism. And so you kind of get some of that in this scene with that little monitor guy. And as he's walking through different rooms, he has like flashbacks to different moments in his life.
Yep, with his family.
And it's pretty sad, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's rough. Like he walks by where the TV was, and he has a flashback of his son watching TJ Laser.
Goes to the kitchen. He has memories of him and his wife and kid. And then he goes to the bedroom, and he has memory of him and his wife sleeping together.
Like he finds a burned photo, and he remembers like posing for the photo, and it's like, and then like the stupid monitor guy, it's like, would you like me to give you a quote? And he just
smashes it,
and he just like punches the screen out, and it's like, yeah, fuck that guy.
And then we see him go to work. Back to work.
And he goes looking for Leon in the club.
Yeah, and he drags his ass out by the hair.
That part was funny.
I thought it was funny how in this like techno nightclub, everybody's like, "Hey, Robocop's here!" Like nobody's like making a big deal about it. Like they just like the crowd just like parts for him.
Yeah,
and they're almost kind of hyped to see him. And then when he does like arrest Nash, people are like, "Yeah, go!" Like they're just vibing. It's great. No, Nash pulls that gun and it goes flying when Robocop like clocks him.
And some club goer catches the gun and just continues dancing.
He's just like, "Yeah, I got this now." Yeah. It's like, if you've ever been to a club, like that is kind of the feel sometimes. It's just like, somebody has like a fight or gets drug out or whatever, and it's like, "Yeah, sucks for you, man." And you just keep going.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. It seems like there's a lot. It seems like between this movie and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, it seems like if you're gonna have a nightclub scene with a whole big fight with these eccentric-looking characters, nobody gets fazed about it. Whether it's a cyborg cop or anthropomorphic turtles.
Yeah. I'm just remembering that whole Vanilla Ice sequence. I can't believe they filmed that. Like that happened in a movie at some point in time. Just like, good lord. What a time to be alive.
I would say the 80s and early 90s. It's and meanwhile, and I said, yeah, meanwhile we got Bob Morton is at home is at his place, doing blow with two women.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I did have there was a tweet I saw a while ago. Excuse me, to kind of describe the phenomenon of watching movies in that time period, like when you were really little. It's like, it is 1990. You are 10 years old. Like, the title Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comes on the screen in the theater. You are screaming. Your friends are screaming. Your parents settle in. Like, your life will never, ever be this good ever again. And it's like, damn, it was darkly profound. Just that whole line, you are screaming, your friends are screaming. But anyway, yeah, so Bob is kind of celebrating his success by having a drug and hooker party.
Yep.
When he gets a knock at the door and he's like, oh, I bet that's the champagne. And nope, it's Clarence. And I actually see this quoted a lot on Twitter. Clarence just walks in the room like
Bitches leave.
with a gun to like Bob's head, and it's just like, bitches leave. And it's like, and they're just like, call us. And it's like, he's gonna die. Like, you don't read the situation. Like, but anyway, Clarence shoots him a few times in the legs to humble him, and then he puts in that tape. It's like, hi Bob, it's me, Dick. By now you're probably on your knees. It's like, geez. Like, it's a really vicious, like, like he wouldn't come in person, but he needed to gloat, like, it kind of shows off just how much of a vicious character Dick actually is, when we've gotten hints towards it, but we haven't really seen it all that much.
Well, there's
a bathroom scene. I don't remember where in the plot that fit in, but I remember it happens. And
there's a prior scene where the two of them are in the executive washroom, where Morton is talking to one of his associates, and shit talks Jones, who's in one of the stalls taking a dump. And Jones comes out and tells him about all the names that they used to call the old man.
That is actually a really great scene too, because Bob is just talking to like the other guy that he's with. And it's like, oh, Dick, he's got this killer rep, but he's just a pussy, And as the more he like picks on Dick Jones, the more like so it's not really focused on in the frame, but the other guys in the washroom get like visibly worried and run out of the bathroom, like the more shit he says, until like we get that close up of like, somebody's in that stall. Oh no, is kind of the feel of that scene.
And the interaction is definitely a little
really intimidating. Yeah.
He
like,
is
the one guy is like, I gotta go, and he doesn't even finish like pissing at the urinal. Like, he pisses his pants and runs out the door because he's so afraid of just being close to Jones when Jones blows up.
Well,
it was like, it's a great scene.
Yeah, and Jones actually caresses his hair like it's a loving moment too. So you can almost like get that whole sense of I really want this guy's job kind of thing, like he's the other guy who got
it's like a tender touch, like as a threat.
Yeah,
he grabs his hair like right after. It's like, you just fucked, grabs hair with the wrong guy. And there's actually a moment like that in Halloween Ends too, which reminded me of this scene a little bit. Somebody gets I'm trying not to spoil Halloween Ends, but somebody tries to attack Laurie, and like she knocks him to the ground and like grabs him like by the hair as she's like lecturing him, and it's like, hey, this is kind of like Robocop. But so this is where Dick Jones basically says, like, I'm going to kill you to Bob, and Bob doesn't necessarily pay attention to that subtext. But Bob kind of lays it out in that little tape that he has Clarence play. It's like, the saddest part is we could have been friends. Like, they could have they probably could have gotten along. But Bob sort of let his ambition go to his head. And Clarence leaves a grenade on Bob's like coffee table and blows up his house. And so it's like, damn.
Is Camila Mendes soft launch?
Sorry.
What the fuck is that? I thought we were playing a clip from the movie. I was confused for a second there. But anyway, I think after the death of Bob, we get the scene where Robocop crashes into the drug lab where Clarence is doing business with what looks like some other crime lord. Was that Forrest?
The guy's named Sal, the cocaine producer.
Okay, yeah.
Boy, they sure had a lot of cocaine in that place.
Well, I mean,
It's the 80s. Cocaine was everywhere.
some might even say in the writers' room of certain movies. Known and unknown. But anyway, so Robocop walks in on this deal and basically just shoots up the factory in another one of our like really cool set pieces. And, like, Sal gets blasted. A few members of Clarence's gang get shot up too. And Robocop basically shuts down the factory. And he's just like throwing Clarence around too. And Clarence really spills his guts here. It's like, I work for Dick Jones. And we haven't really seen them connected in that way before. So it's a bit of a revelation to the audience too, I think, that they were like connected in terms of their activities. Like, what do we think of that?
I would say, although I would say Boddicker had already taken out Bob Morton on Jones's behalf.
I was going to say, isn't it great to hear a rat sing opera?
Right.
But no, that was such. But yeah, that's really good. From the shootout to like when RoboCop is finally, just throwing Boddicker around and finally gets him to talk.
I think it's interesting. Apparently, while he's throwing him around, he's reading him his rights, as it were. And the producers were worried that maybe they would offend real cops, by doing it this way. But supposedly, every time they showed it to cops, they loved that part. They were like, man, we wish we could do that.
And I think an important kind of contextual thing too is like everybody knows like Clarence like definitely did. We know he's guilty for sure, so it's kind of to see him get punished a little bit, Whereas if it was with somebody where it was more ambiguous, like I don't think we'd enjoy that scene quite so much.
No, there's a thin line between excessive police brutality and what would we call this? A satisfactory police brutality.
Yes.
Yeah. One of my favorite things from this scene is we get a number of Robocop's POV shots where we get the sense that he's maybe about to finish Clarence off, but from his point of view, we see that readout pop up. Directive 3, directive, uphold the law, and it like stops him from killing Clarence right there.
Well, didn't Clarence say something to the fact that he was a cop, and that's what like reminded him of the directive?
I think he does, yeah, and that could be a factor in that scene too.
What's Directive 4? is what it is.
Or before.
Well,
Isn't that
Directive
World
4
War I?
is, in fact, something entirely different, which comes up in Dick Jones' office.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Directive
although
Right.
before that, he does take Boddicker to the police station to be booked.
Boddicker spits blood on the paperwork. Just give me my phone, go. Like a scumfuck. And we cut to
Jones's office.
We get to Jones's office where he's on the phone. It's like, okay, just don't say anything. I'll have the lawyers get you out of there. Man, you really screwed up. Clearly talking to Clarence when Robocop shows up. Like, you are under arrest for aiding and abetting a known felons. Well, you better take me in. And then Directive 4, which was the secret directive, kicks in to where he can't arrest an operating member of OCP. And that sort of ties into the themes that they had of like corporate control, I think. To where like the people who make the products can't be held accountable by that.
I believe Jones takes credit for the directive himself, right? Like that he had somehow.
This was my contribution to your project.
Yes. Which clearly was installed to keep his ass out of trouble. That he probably didn't give a damn about the rest of the board, but by doing it that way, he could kind of is blanket immunity, if you will, or at least so he thought.
Yeah, he is probably he's definitely the most unethical, like criminal member of the board that we see.
Yeah, it's even though I do not agree at all with this company, its very existence strikes me as rather evil. The actual director, the actual head of the company, actually seems like he has his heart in the right place, relatively speaking. Like, he seems to actually believe all this stuff about public order and for the greater good and all that kind of stuff. He just is using some unfortunate means to go about it. And again, Morton was kind of like a couple steps further down that slope. And but they come off as paragons of decency compared to Jones.
Yep. So Jones sends Ed 209 after RoboCop.
We get that robot on robot battle.
Yep.
Which, although it's kind of brief, like it's pretty intense. So Robocop manages to blow up one of Ed 209's arms, and Ed 209 manages to like really fuck Robocop up.
Yes.
Till he gets to the staircase.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is like a hilarious scene.
One of many.
The Ed 209 really was a flop,
Yeah.
Well, even so, he was just a prototype. So when he fell, he fell and went boom and acted like a child.
They use pig noises for when that robot flops over too. That is like a great moment where Robocop escapes on the stairs, and the Ed 209 has never had to deal with stairs before, so it's like it hesitates, like trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to do this? And then it just immediately falls down the stairs when it tries. Because it's bipedal design.
Probably
never factored that in.
Probably the most human you've ever seen Ed 209 be.
Yeah,
Right.
And then RoboCop gets outside. He manages to get outside, but he's cornered by a SWAT. He's cornered by a SWAT team.
And they just let it rip.
Yep.
An OCP SWAT team, like the precinct cops are then they're like, no, wait, he's a cop. But the OCP guys just start shooting.
But he manages to get. But Lewis manages to get him away. and to the and takes him to the steel mill where he first got shot up. I'm going to say where he first became RoboCop.
Yep, and he definitely needs a moment to recoup, anyways. So, but it's at this moment that he lays in wait for Lewis to come back and give him some things that he needs, including that drill that took off his helmet, and that's when we kind of see him at like what he looks like underneath, for the first time, which is kind of like his face is like the template, and the rest is like robotic as hell.
Mm-hmm. So meanwhile, the cops are on strike, and criminals are running loose in the streets of Detroit, including Boddicker and his gang, who've now been supplied with military grade weapons with a couple of SUXs and some military grade weapons.
What did you think about
Cobra assault rifles? That was a fun moment.
Yeah.
What did you think about the first unmasking of Robot and what RoboCop and what he looked like, Dustin?
I mean,
it looks kind of sad because it's just his face stretched over a frame.
Yeah, I mean, well, I kind of knew what RoboCop looked like under his helmet prior to seeing the movie because of all the toys, because there was a lot of the RoboCop toys had him without the helmet, had removable helmets. So I knew what he looked like, but still, like seeing him take it off and seeing him look at what he had become and what had become of his what happened to his family after he was killed, was very sad.
They moved on.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's fucked up.
Okay. Well, I believe this is, like you said, when Clarence actually gets the tracking device from Dick Jones and gives all of his henchmen that are with him. In fact, they're all from that original shootout moment. And he gives them all these assault rifles that they kick ass.
Don't forget the whole scene when he's first showing off the gun.
Well, he blows it.
Where they blow the car, they blow the nuke. They got the black guy's car up, and she take turns blowing up stuff. The other guy blows up a store, and the other one blows up another car.
That part was hilarious.
Yeah, it was. You blew my car, man. Was a nice car too, for a moment.
Okay. And then I guess after that is when they take the tracker and they're like, oh, they're at the steel mills. So they end up coming on their way.
That's where it started.
Yep. Kind of like the end is the beginning is the end, or
full circle. Well, or full circle.
Yeah.
And so the RoboCop engages in a shootout with Boddicker and his gang. Emil tries to charge a RoboCop with a truck and crashes into a tank of toxic waste.
That was great.
And comes out with the Toxic Avenger. I love that part. Just the melting, the makeup.
Yeah, great job.
And he just gets run over. He just ends up getting run over into just completely destroyed.
Ray Wise's character is like, "Don't touch me, man." And what else happens?
You have, one final showdown between RoboCop and Boddicker with Lewis and Leon and Boddicker's right-hand man Leon acting as each other's right hand man, or sure as their backup.
Yeah, he tells her to go get the car, and she does, and I believe
Lewis gets shot. But then Leon drops a ton of beams on RoboCop.
Yeah.
And she picks up the gun and blows his ass up.
Yep.
Sprow! As one of our friends like to say.
And then RoboCop uses his reader to just jabs Boddicker in the neck.
Yeah, after he stabs him in the shoulder.
Yep.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention that middle finger spike. He actually used it to give someone the middle finger earlier in the film.
Mm-hmm.
That's something else I wanted to comment on. Like, that's such an odd computer interface. Like, does anybody know of any technology that uses like a big sharp spike like that to interact with another computer?
No. I sort of feel like it's a proto finger. It's like a precursor to a thumb drive.
Or it kind of looks like what Archie uses.
I feel like I've seen that multiple times in sci-fi. I don't know if it's
yeah, it kind of looks like Archie's arm when he goes and communicates with other Rocketeers.
I'm not sure where it originated, maybe, but I don't know.
Kind of a fun little thing to comment on. RoboCop is a downloadable character in Mortal Kombat 11. And at least one of his fatalities does use that spike.
Nice.
Okay. And
because he takes Clarence out with it.
Yep.
So like Nash pins him with the junk from the magnet, and his partner retaliates by blasting the control booth for that thing with one of the Cobras that she takes off of one of the fallen goons.
So after that, RoboCop ends up going to the building in which OCP is having another board meeting, and he ends up taking.
Ed Flordine's outside guarding the building.
Yep, and he
he destroys the fuck
him
out
up
of that robot
with one shot.
He just fucks it up.
For some reason, I don't know why.
Yeah, RoboCop took one of the Cobras off Clarence's gang, and they just blast the shit out of that 209 with it. It's so funny.
Yep.
The legs walk around like one of those...
like a chicken with its head cut off.
Yep.
It stumbles like an ATS key from from Star Wars.
It falls over.
I was amused by those guns. First of all, they were pretty cool looking, and they were clearly effective. And they talked about them in the commentary. They described exactly what sort of a gun it was, but I can't remember the specifics. But they said they were based off of real sniper rifles that fired... I think it was a 1-inch round or a half-inch round. I can't remember the
grenades or some shit.
Was that?
Like grenades or something.
Well, no, like rounds, like shells, but they were big ones, big ones. And I know Dave and Ron will maybe have this fresh in mind. But since we just did the discussion on Hellsing Ultimate, I was looking at those guns and I was like, oh, those are like Saris's starter pistols for after she turns.
Yeah.
That's like what she starts with, and then she moves up from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think they said in the commentary those are accurate to like 1,000 meters or something like that. It's a pretty pretty decent range on those.
And it looks like they pack a hell of a punch, you know.
Indeed.
They do look like they're shooting grenades.
But yeah, so he heads up to the board room, and when he walks in, Dick Jones is like, he's scared. You could tell he's scared. So he takes the old man as a hostage. That's not actually all he gets called, is the old man, you know.
Yeah.
But he takes him hostage and says, "I'll shoot," you know, and he's like, "I cannot arrest this man."
An OCP officer.
An OCP
Prime
officer.
directives.
Because this is one of my prime directives, and he's the old man's like, quickly,
Dick,
you're fired.
You're fired.
Right. Yep.
Pop, pop, pop,
Robocop
pop,
thinks
pop,
and then
pop,
shoots him
pop.
out the shoots Jones out the window.
Right.
Well, the old man
He
actually
threw him out the window.
the old man actually
Shoots
hit
him
him,
out the window.
actually hits him, and then steps aside, and then lets Robocop shoot him
Yeah.
out the window.
Yep.
So,
But yeah, I did
Well,
like
he says
that.
thank you. Well, he says thank you. You know?
Yeah.
thank you.
Shoots him.
I really wanted to do that.
And then I don't know why, but I do like what the old man says, like, to him afterwards. He's like, "Hey, kid," or something like that.
What's your name?
What's your name? Murphy.
Murphy, yeah.
He says it with a smirk. He says it with like a half smile.
Right.
It's like he's reclaimed some of his humanity, but not all of it. Yeah.
I can't remember which one it was. It was one of the three on the commentary that said that they went to a screening, and when they did that, and like I think it was Verhoeven, actually. I think he said he was kind of nervous about it. But they were like, he said they went to the screening and he said, "What's your name, kid?" And everyone in the theater yelled out, "Murphy!" And then he said it, and whoever it was, they were like, "That was like one of the great moments of my life."
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think we should also point out we get maybe the worst effect in this movie as Doug Jones is falling out of that window. Like
Yeah.
the part they used for him falling has way too long arms for a human, and it's
Yeah,
very funny.
I heard that part.
It was still a great. It was still a great scene, though.
So, I think there's something we also kind of forgot to mention too. Like a lot of times when we see the TV clips, there are clips of some ridiculous show that seems
Yes.
to have no real. I have no clue what the hell is going on in
Actually,
that.
there
I'll
was
buy that for
a
$1.
reality show that
It's a reality show.
kind of based on a game show.
Baldwin dude with like hot
Kind of
girls, and he's
I
like,
thought it was some kind of game show.
when they shove their boobs in his face. Like that seems to be the
I
entire
think It
show.
was supposed to be a sitcom, wasn't it?
A sitcom or a game show, but anyway, the guy tosses a cake in her boobs and says, "I'd buy that for $1." But I think it's supposed to be a commentary on the state of television on television and
Yes.
culture. On the
IMDb has this little trivia thing which I like. It says the repeated line "I buy that for $1" comes from Cyril M. Kornbluth's short story "The Marching Morons," which presents a similarly cynical view of an over-commercialized future that's desensitized to violence and war. A radio game show in that short story uses the line "I'd buy that for $0.25" as its signature phrase. So, kind of interesting. I guess it was a little bit of an Easter egg there to something that came before, but it did become a pretty catchy little phrase.
Yeah, and we even have Bob and that guy's talking to in the bathroom like quote it to each other, which kind of just shows like it has a place in the culture of this world. Like people recognize it, like people watch that show and love it.
And throughout the whole movie, there's characters are watching it on television.
Right? Didn't they use a similar?
In this world, yeah.
Am I remembering correctly that they did a similar thing in Idiocracy where they had one particular show that everyone was watching?
Yes.
I think
It was like Ow My
Yeah.
Ball or something.
yeah, and also in the Lego Movie.
Yep, and
Everything is
and
awesome.
also,
Yeah.
if anybody ever played the arcade game Smash TV, the game starts off with the host saying he'd buy that for $1.
It sounds about right for Smash TV. So like I played it once and I know the premise, but I don't remember a whole lot else.
I mean, the whole game itself was basically an homage to 80s sci-fi action like RoboCop and
Exactly.
The Running Man.
Yeah, that Far Cry Blood Dragon game was kind of the same too. So it ended with you like riding like a high-tech armored dinosaur, and the dinosaur could talk to you. And it was like, I like it when we blow things up. It was pretty sick, actually. I need to play that again.
I'd buy that for $1.
I think you can buy it for $1. It's pretty cheap at this point. It's kind of old, but damn, it's good. But yeah, so I just wanted to kind of add that in because there's, every scene in this movie is somewhat important to like what it's trying to get across or to the story, or there's always something happening. Like there are no superfluous scenes. And so I just kind of wanted to make sure we mention that because I'd buy that for $1 is kind of pervasive all throughout the movie. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly when and where it strikes, for lack of a better term. But yeah, we get that triumphant moment with Robocop, kind of getting around Directive 4. You're fired! Thank you! Blam! And yeah, so there you have it. There's Robocop. So let's, I guess, rock out into special effects. I think they're pretty great. Like, aside from falling off the building, they all hold up well. They're all convincing. They all appear to be kind of in the mid-budget range, but I think that actually kind of fits in with sort of the grimy world that they sort of have. Like, stuff looks used even when it's new. So I think the effects in this are spectacular. Like, anybody have anything to add?
Well, yeah, they definitely have a lot of practical effects on top of some of the CGI moments and some stop motion, So it's like they have a little bit of everything, It's not like entirely overused, and the stop motion is at least decent where it's needed, like with Ed 205 or 20, yeah. Even though some of the moments are a little corny, like when he falls down the stairs, it sounds like he's like a kid who has just fallen down and can't get back up.
Oh, I wouldn't call that particularly corny. I kind of, I really liked the effects there, especially like that one last little foot twitch, like the, or wait, no, that was the second one. But anyway, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But the film, this one, it won a Special Achievement Oscar for sound effects editing, and it was nominated for sound and for film editing. It definitely got a little bit of praise in its time, but for the time, I'd say it holds up tolerably well. I agree that one guy getting thrown out the building looked a little off. That was, but otherwise the effects were mostly pretty solid, I thought.
What about
makeup effects too as well?
The makeup, especially with RoboCop and with Emil after he gets doused in toxic waste.
Well, even just like some simpler stuff, like where Bodiger, after he gets tossed through all those windows and he's like crisscrossed with cuts all over him.
It's very convincing, yeah. It looks like they really hurt him. The scars stay for the rest of the movie, too, because this is happening in the span of like 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
What did you think about the effects, Tammy?
I thought they were pretty decent. I mean, I think that for what they had at the time, they did pretty good on everything. And RoboCop looked very realistic. Um, I do I do like that when that other one fell down the stairs and acted like he was having a temper tantrum. That was that was pretty funny for the here's this big old robot and. But the only thing is that the big robot though almost didn't you know that that seemed more like it was not for real. In some ways.
Yeah, Ed 209 was kind of spliced into the footage in a way that made him look kind of like he wasn't actually there because they used the stop motion props
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah, you noticed that too. He just
Right.
didn't seem quite.
Well,
Other
basically,
than
like
that,
when he was motionless, it was a prop. But when he was in motion, it was like it was stop motion with everything else on a green screen behind, or something like that. Like it was. There were moments where it looked a little off, but yeah.
for the most part, though, I think everything was pretty good.
What about you, Crow?
I agree. I thought the especially for the time, the special effects were great. Even though like you said the one scene where he's falling, special effects weren't the greatest there, but it was still such a great scene that you can overlook that. Just because I don't know, I just love seeing him fall into his death because he deserved it. But yeah, the whole thing, like everyone said, the makeup was definitely great. They didn't, they look like things that happened to them, and they kept it on there like with the cuts, like you said, and the toxic dude. Yeah, that was great. I mean, when he came out of that, I was like, ah, wow, like what's he gonna look like? And then he stands up, and I'm like, oh hell yeah. His whole face and hands and everything are melting and shit and puffed up, and it's fucking great.
I know I thought of Toxic Avenger right away when I saw that.
Yep.
Yeah, I did too, actually. And
Did anybody else find it odd that he gets immediately like mutated by that stuff?
I just enjoyed it.
I mean, it's really cool. It's just kind of like it feels like that would have taken like more than a few minutes, to change so much.
Probably, but it was fun. So
Like levels of melting.
Yeah, I mean, it was rad. So I mean, nobody actually cares about the logistics, but at the same time, it's just kind of like weird,
I mean, I could generally do without body melting in any movie, but I will admit, in a movie this fast paced, if they were going to go there, it had to be fast.
I'm like how he just like splatters against the car, like, and then.
Oh yeah, that was an interesting thing. Well, that was an interesting thing in the commentary. That was one thing the MPA really wanted them to cut. But apparently in test screenings, it was like their favorite moment. And they were like, we're not cutting everyone's favorite moment.
that's right. There you go. Tell them off.
Exactly. So I think we're done with effects. So let's move on to music.
Oh,
Ready?
score.
This has like a really cool main theme. Like I can still hear it in my head.
I love Basil Poulidoris's main theme for this. It's iconic. It's iconic. It's
pretty solid.
Yeah, it's very heroic. It's heroic. It's
and like the music itself seems to basically just go Robocop, Robocop. You can kind of hear it when you hear that piece of music.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The theme for this is definitely spot on for this particular movie. It is definitely iconic. Anyone else? Were there any other musical things besides the theme, like some 80s music or whatnot? That
I mean, there was the music in the club.
which wasn't all that memorable.
I found it kind of catchy.
It's just like club beats. I like that. I mean, then again, I like club beats, so I'm easy to please, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
okay.
No, it fit the scene pretty well, though. You know,
Yeah.
like almost like industrial hammering kind of thing, while like this metal man is walking through the crowd. It was almost kind of on the nose, but I mean, it works.
Yeah.
Well, I guess moving on from music, is it time for favorite scenes? Yeah, it is. So I'm having a lot of trouble picking a favorite from this personally. So I think I'll go last, but how about we start with whoever's ready?
I'm ready.
Go ahead, Kroll.
My favorite scene is the end scene when he's like, I can't arrest him, blah blah. He's like, Dick, you're fired, and he's like, thank you, and then shoots him out the window and the falling, and like I said, CGA, they didn't do such a great job with the look, but it was so satisfying seeing him going out the window, and also honorable mention the dude coming out of the toxic waste and turning like that. Maybe it was too quick, but it was sure as hell fun to watch. So yeah, those are my favorite scenes right there. Next.
Well, I guess I'll go. I agree. It's hard to pick like a clear winning like number one scene. If I had to go with one, well, I would say generally the scenes with Bodiger are some of my favorites because I thought he was a fun character, and a lot of them were pretty pivotal moments in the movie. The scene where he kind of, I guess you could say, the scene where the band gets back together, like right before their big confrontation with Robocop. That was a pretty fun scene, especially when he blows up the dude's car and just pisses him off. But I really like the scene with him and Dick Jones. It's like in the commentary they said that they hadn't originally put the two of them together, and they had more parallel stories than intersecting. But then eventually they realized it just made sense. And there's like, I don't know why, but there's one moment that I just really liked where they're talking. It's like he comes in all hot and bothered and angry because he's all cut up and everything, and what have you. And he says, I did all this stuff for you. And he's getting ready to storm out. And then Jones just calmly starts talking about, like, well, you could have control of this and naming all these different rackets. And you see Bodiger's got one foot out the door, and then he just kind of almost does a little bit of a moonwalk back and then turns around and just saddles up next to him. And it's like, I don't know why. I just thought that whole scene just was played beautifully. And I don't know if that's my favorite, but it's one that sticks out.
That is a really good scene that I think we probably neglected to touch on. Like just how quickly Clarence is like, well, maybe we can be friends after all, Richard.
Exactly.
Like he's suddenly like very polite and very interested in what he has to say.
That is kind of funny. Looks like we are going to be friends after all.
I think for me, so it might change if I thought about it a bit more, but I think my favorite scene is kind of RoboCop like springing into action for the first time, and that montage of like the 3 or 4 crimes he stops, like with that liquor store robbery that he breaks up and just like causes maybe more damage than the guy would have actually.
I was thinking that too. I'm like, you probably caused way more damage than the guy was stealing.
To where showing off a targeting computer with the
But they didn't seem to be mad. They still seem to be happy that he showed up, despite him wrecking their place.
No, but than getting shot by some nut, having a glass door broken, And then the hostage situation with the mayor or whatever he was, like, that whole scene just like establishes, like, okay, this is who RoboCop is. This is what RoboCop can do. Let's rock. That's kind of the feeling of the scene that I get, and I really enjoyed that. So, I mean, there's a lot of other things that are just as good in this movie, but I think I would pick that if I had to pick one.
By the way, if we were doing favorite lines, I'd have to go with that. I'd buy that for $1.
Well, I mean, how can you not?
There's like there's so many great moments, like moments big and small in this movie. So many great lines. God, yeah, definitely the toxic waste, the Emil getting doused in toxic waste is definitely one. RoboCop going on his first patrol. And of course, I'll buy that for $1. It's so hard for me to pick just like one favorite moment. The whole thing just works to just everything comes together, and it's hard. It's not easy to pick one thing out.
Okay. What about you, Tammy?
I guess one of my favorite scenes is when, he blows up the Coke place, because they're all shooting at him and he just goes boom, boom, and he just picks them off all one by one. And it's like, are you guys all fucking stupid? Yeah. You're not going to get away alive. Why don't you just take off instead of keep trying to fire at them? If I was one of them guys that was shooting at him after I seen him just go right down the line and pick everybody off, I would be like, "Oh, forget this. I'm out of here."
Drop my gun, saying I give up. Sorry.
Huh?
I was like, I'd be dropping my gun. I give up.
Well, no kidding, and they just all kept coming, and I'm like, you guys are a bunch of idiots,
right?
I mean that. So I mean, I just thought that was a good action scene. So
There are a lot of favorite moments for me. So yeah, it's hard for me to pick, but I do enjoy the Chiodo Brothers little commercial with the dinosaur. I'm glad that you mentioned it earlier, Dustin, because I was laughing at that moment. But I do.
I got the stupid car. Oh.
I do get a kick out of the whole montage of him going out and kicking ass and whatnot, and I do enjoy the melting scene of what's his name. I guess I also enjoy the death of Dick Jones.
Hell yeah.
That was pretty classic. And he does make for a good corporate villain, So, I don't know why, but I do like the moment of him caressing Bob. For some reason, it's like he would have loved to love him as a bro, but it just was never meant to be. But yeah, those are some of the good moments, and I do enjoy Lewis's introduction. That too is kind of iconic.
Yeah.
But that's me. I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, there's an awful lot more we could talk about.
Yeah,
but I don't know if we're necessarily equipped for that, because there's some really cool, really interesting political deep dives you could do onto the politics of this film and what it represents, trying to get across. But I
so
tried.
prescient in some ways.
I tried to do some research on that for you guys, and it was we would need the entire
rabbit hole
just about that. So it is kind of funny though, because we have had there have been people online saying things like, "I bet you think RoboCop is political," and it's like, you didn't see it, did you? Holy shit.
It's a Paul Verhoeven film. There's always politics involved.
I mean, Paul Verhoeven is a very political filmmaker.
Yep.
Like
they talked in the
comment either.
They talked in the commentary about how some of the politics that are shown, some of the current events, make the film seem dated until you think about them a little harder. And then it's like, oh, maybe not.
Like we basically live in RoboCop world, like at this point.
Yep.
So, but anyway, soapbox aside, so yeah, RoboCop is great. Hopefully you love it too. Feel free to explore some of the other content out there about discussing RoboCop, because I guarantee a lot of it is really good. Chapo Trap House has some pretty good discussions on RoboCop too, and Paul Verhoeven and Starship Troopers. So that's where I got some of my sources for this. And yeah, so thanks for listening. Hope you had a great night. And I'm going to do my outro and leave because I have had a terrible birthday and I need to black out. So anyway, I'm the Crypt of Horrors. I host the YouTube channel The Crypt of Horrors, where I collect horror movie stuff and show off my weekly finds. Finds haven't been so weekly lately, so content has slowed down, but I do have a bunch of new videos planned and a bunch of old videos that still need to go live. So go find me on YouTube as The Crypt of Horrors, and I'll try to start putting stuff back out for you. I'm also on Instagram as, guess what, The Crypt of Horrors. And I post on there a lot more frequently, showing off more of my horror collection and just kind of my general shenanigans. Like I was trying to do 31 Days of Horror for October, for example, but I kind of went on an involuntary vacation where I didn't have access to a TV to watch anything, so that kind of fell short, but I am working on coming that back. So you can find me on Twitter as DurCryptaxis, which I would eventually like to rebrand all my channels as just Cryptaxis, because it's a lot easier to say than The Crypt of Horrors. But there are some complications there. But if you want to talk to me, you can talk to me on Twitter as DurCryptaxis. So I hope you had a great time listening to our show. And like, share, subscribe. And yeah, and with that, I'm going to give it to Dave and head out.
Sounds good. Happy birthday again, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Better.
Happy birthday.
Yep.
Appreciate it, gang. Bye.
All right. All right.
Alrighty. I guess we're doing our outros here. So, Forrest, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
All right. My name is Forrest Bennett. I am an independent film producer and occasional actor based in Long Island, New York. I my first feature film as an actor, Amityville Thanksgiving, came out earlier today. You can get that on Blu-ray and Blu-ray and DVD on Amazon, Walmart, Best Buy. There's a lot of fun. It's really exciting to have, and it's been getting coverage from Fangoria, Bloody Disgusting, Dread Central. It's been really exciting to be part of that. And also I acted in a short short monster movie that came out last week on Halloween called Night of the Day of the Tompkins Weed Monster 3D, where I play the title weed monster. And you can watch that on Dread Central. And then I have another movie coming, and then I have another movie that I acted in coming out, Silent Night, Bloody Night 3, and that's coming out in December. So yeah, I'm just picking up steam on the. I'm been picking up steam in front of the camera lately.
Nice. Very cool. Heading over to you, Jake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
All right, I'm Kotobuki Jake. I'm the co-host of Septum 7 versus the World, YouTube channel where we talk about physical media and all of its forms. We do pickup videos. We do various other things. This week we talked about what we saw in October. We also recently did a discussion alluded to earlier for Anime Anticlimax. We covered Hellsing Ultimate as our Halloween month discussion. May have one in the offing for November. There's still some planning being involved there, but it looks like we'll be traveling into the past for whatever the next discussion will be. And then meanwhile, I keep very, very busy most of the time, work full-time job, and I have a nursery, RVA Homegrown Natives, that I helped co-found. I do try to get some viewing in, though, and I try to join these fine folks here a couple times, once or twice a week, to talk about stuff. And I've enjoyed, hitting this particular one. It's good times. And I'm going to go ahead with that and say goodnight, as it is after midnight here, and y'all have a good one.
Alrighty, man.
Until Pumpkin.
Good night.
Enjoy your evening.
Jacob.
And Kroll, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I enjoy watching TV shows and movies and reading, playing games, video games. Also, come on this podcast, and I do the Sunday podcast with you, Dave, and Tammy. Also do the anime discussion and some other discussions here and there I pop up in. Also, you're doing your first anthology, and I'm going to be having my acting debut on that, so that's exciting for me. I've always wanted to be an actor when I was young and never thought it would happen. And hey, I'll get my chance to at least acting into something, and hopefully a few people will be able to see it. That'll be great. Yeah, so that's about me for now and what I'm into.
All right.
Tammy?
Tammy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm David's fiance, and I go on this channel and another one, and I enjoy hanging out and talking with everybody at both places and about the movies and seeing what they feel about them. And sometimes I'm checking out movies that I haven't seen before, and some of them are good, some are, but it's still enjoyable. So that's about all right now, because now that it's winter time, I don't have my fun summer things to do. So
Can't play with a curve.
no. Well, I could, but you don't want to take the car out when it's winter time.
And my name is David Streggy. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us on this film journey with us. It's been a pleasure to share this adventure with you. But we are definitely not done with Dustin's films for the rest of the month. So stay tuned for that. What do we have next week?
I was going to say the next week, Ringo.
Yeah. Next week we'll be discussing the Japanese film Ringu. So come back and join us for that next Tuesday. But I also moonlight on a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where we also discuss movies in a podcast like thing on Sundays, and we are going to be discussing the Thanksgiving film Thanksgiving. So stay tuned for that. I know that we have discussed it here on Inside Movies Galore, but it is time for Delusions of Grandeur to discuss the film. So join us. We're going to have a blast. But I also do some video pickups and video reviews on the channel. So check them out. Like, share, and subscribe. But yeah, Crow busted out with some news that I am actually putting together an anthology. And it is called Tales of the Forgotten. I'm actually using a character that was found that was actually in Joe Sherlock's Dark Zone 13 by the name of Boris, and I like the guy behind the creature so much that I want to extend his character, and I have permission to do so. So I'm going to. So hopefully it's going to be exciting. I've got a lot of films so far from other filmmakers, as well as trying to direct from afar in Croatia. A lot of scenes for his character. So hopefully it's going to be exciting to put some of these wraparound segments together and bring to you a film that is at least worthwhile as my first effort out there, at least behind the director chair. So definitely like, share, and subscribe, and hopefully you've enjoyed our discussion here on Robocop. I know I have fun. So everyone, all at the same time, let's say I'd buy that for $1.
I buy that.
I
for
buy that for
$1.
$1.